Welcome back to the Corner of Story and Game, where we explore the craft and strategy behind storytelling and game design. Joining me is Joe Adams, the creative mind behind The Dice Decide, a brand new YouTube live play D&D show. With a background in film and production, Joe has crafted a unique experience for both players and the viewers. So let's get into it. Joe, thanks for joining me.
Heck yeah! Thanks for having me, man.
I'm excited. You recently launched The Dice Decide 2 weeks ago as of recording this right now. There's 2 episodes out, I believe, and I want to hear all about it. I want to pick your brain.
Yeah, pick away. Oh man, yeah. So technically, so we have 4 episodes technically shot, is what we have right now. I've released episode 1 to like the public on YouTube. 2 weeks ago, and then episode 2 is technically out for early access on Patreon. But probably when this comes out, episode 2 should be out to the world. January 3rd is our release date to the public for episode 2. So what I've been doing is, for the best chance for success for the show, is the first Friday of every month. I mean, in a perfect world, I would love to like release these all at once. But what I've just been telling people is like the reality is we only have 4 episodes shot, and if there's a huge gap between episode 4 and 5, it's gonna kill the momentum. I mean, a monthly release already kills a lot of momentum, but it does give people a little bit of time to get caught up with everything. So it's sort of a double-edged sword at that point.
Right on. Well, this will be out before that releases to the public, so people can head to Patreon still if they want to watch it early. Like it's going to be out right away, so
Yeah.
that'll be exciting.
Yay!
Okay, I want to dig into all that, but before we get into it, let's set the stage. Who is Joseph? Your journey into filmmaking, storytelling, tabletop role-playing games, all that. Give me the background.
Okay, so I'll start off. I was trying to think of where I want to start off. So I'll start off like in like the film world. So I'm a cinematographer out in Los Angeles. That's my main job. I do a lot of camera operating. I do a lot of behind the scenes, either unit still photography or video for commercials, TV shows, feature films. You name it, I'll usually try to shoot it if I can. So I've been out in LA for about 10 years. I moved from Ohio originally. And in Ohio, I went to school I went to like a college, sort of got like a film degree there. It was like in electronic media production, and I also have a degree in theater. And quickly I learned way more on set than I ever did in college. Like one day on set as a PA, I learned so much more. So it's like a weird, like when I moved out here, I worked at Outback Steakhouse. I worked at Outback Steakhouse for 10 years. I transferred out to here, and with the hope of working in the film industry, and with a few people, just like connections that I had, I started PAing at a film production company and sort of like learned from there. And I bought a camera when I moved out here 10 years ago, and sort of started that journey into like the film world. And now I strictly do just camera work. And then on the flip side of the TTRPG world, I've always been a huge nerd. Oh my gosh. I mean, video games, Magic the Gathering, all the nerdy things. I've always been into it. I got into Dungeons and Dragons in high school. I had a friend one day was like, "Hey, we're just gonna play D&D," and I'm like, "All right, sounds good." And instantly was hooked. So I instantly went out and bought all the books, a bunch of miniatures, a bunch of floor tiles, and a bunch of all these other things. And then of course, like I think like we played 3 times and then that was it. And then I'm like, I have all these things. I need to play more. So when I went to college, I actually was expecting there to be like a group to play D&D. Like I was like, oh, there'll be a group to play. I tried to find maybe like a club or something like that, and there wasn't one. So I actually started the D&D club at my college, and I was like the president for, I think I ran it for about 3 years. And at our peak, yeah, and at our peak, we had about, I want to say 60, 70 people at our peak. Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So then when I moved out to Los Angeles after college, I sort of fell off because I was so focused on my career. Like I was like, okay, well, I would love to like play games and all that stuff, but I really need to focus on my career. So that's what I did for the past, basically for the past, 8 or 9 years was focusing on my career. And it's been pretty successful. And then, of course, I mean, I don't know how much you want to segue into it, but that's sort of when the pandemic happened, I got really back into either Magic the Gathering, got really back into D&D, started watching a lot of shows, and that's sort of that's like the two paths. And then I mean, I was like, well, let's maybe make a show or something like that.
Just randomly, let's just make a show.
Well, I mean, yeah, 'cause sorry, what was that?
Was there a catalyst? Was there something that sparked the moment where it was like, hey, let's do this?
Yes. So my original plan was so pandemic hits, right? And I'm out of work. And about four-ish months, it was absolutely dead. Nothing was happening. So I was like, I need to figure out how to make money. Like there has to be something that I can do at home. So I bought a 3D printer. I bought a 3D printer in the idea of just printing random stuff. Then I started like getting into like terrain building. I was like, oh, I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to get into terrain because I always see like photos of things and they're so pretty. I'm like, I want to do that. So I bought a 3D printer and I started printing and crafting terrain. And I found Kickstarters. Kickstarters were easy way to get files and also like learn about different companies that make like these STL files. And then I noticed that a lot of the commercials and a lot of the video format that they were putting out there wasn't it was just like a 3D rendering or if it was like iPhone footage of their thing. So I thought, well, I can 3D print something and then I can film it cinematically because I have all the tools. I have the lights, I have the macro lenses, and I can film essentially a commercial for them. Because some of these companies they were making a lot. There was a lot of money being put into these files because I think 3D printing started to just take off because everyone's at home. And so I was like, okay, so that's sort of where it started. So I was like, so then I started 3D printing so many things, so many things. And then I was like, okay, well, I need to build a portfolio because I can't just be like, hey, I could do this. You have to show people what you can do. So I started 3D printing a bunch of stuff, and then I sort of made like mini demo reel of the stuff that I made. And then about 4 months go by, and then work starts picking up, and it's super. Then it was nonstop because everyone's so far behind, and like we need to get caught up. So I was like, well, I'm actually back to work, and I'm making money, and everything's technically fine. But so then I have all these like 3D printed stuff. I'm like, well, what do I do? So and also during this I'm watching like the big shows, Dimension 20, Critical Role, all of those, and I was like, well, maybe I can make a show. Like that's sort of what started everything. I was like, okay, well, I have all the stuff. I have cameras, I have lights, I have 3D terrain. I love the look of Dimension 20. Like that's the look. If I were to make a show, that's what I would want to make. So that was the big push.
Hmm. Wild. What a show like that, once you get good, there had to have been a lot of steps involved in the production. And can you kind of just walk me through without giving away any secret sauce stuff? Like,
No.
how did you go through the process of making this happen?
Um, Man, there's so many steps that go into making a production. I mean, it's a lot of pre-production, especially with something like this. It's a matter of, finding the right location, finding the right people who want to work on it, the timing, scheduling, all of that, and also getting the right, props and story. And I think the story was like the big one. So I, I was trying to think. So I originally came up with the story. I think this sort of like where I had this idea is like, okay, well, I'll make up some sort of story that characters we can all like go through and they can give feedback and we can like change and as the story progresses and like that was like the idea. Then my other original, like my original idea was, how do you make a show different? Because like you already have like in all reality, like I'm not doing anything super, super original. You already have big shows that are already doing this sort of stuff. They have miniature inserts, they already have things. So I was trying to make the story a little bit different. And then I was also what I really wanted, this is what I really wanted to do, is anytime the players go to a new location, like in the story, I wanted to change the background to the fit that setting. So I mean, this is very ambitious. This is if I had money, it's money. If I had the money to do it. So if they were in like a forest, like I would build out like a forest and have like fake trees behind them and like stuff like that. Or yeah, it'd be super cool. Because I didn't want to do I don't I per me personally, I don't like green screen stuff. I don't really like LED volumes. Like, you can just tell there's something magical about like a physical actual set, and also for the players, like I think it really puts them into that spot. And then even for me, like I tell everyone I actually do not like being in front of the camera. I don't. I 100% prefer to be behind the camera. I don't like being a performer. I've done some acting and stuff in college, and then when I moved out here, like I don't feel uncomfortable in the camera. Like I feel very nervous. I don't really like people watching me. But, I've always played D&D, and I've always felt like, yes, D&D is entertaining, and I love doing like silly voices, and I love doing like all of that. But for me, to a certain extent, like there is some acting, there is some entertainment, because I do love improv. I have done improv in the past, and I feel more comfortable doing improv. But like if it's an on-camera thing, you just become so self-aware when the camera's on you, and it's weird, and it's it's one of those things where you become self-aware, and then you almost know, you notice like a switch. And I'll go off on a small like tangent. Like I film a lot of interviews. Like I film a lot of like documentary interviews, things like that. What we'll do sometimes is we'll hit record before we even tell the talent that we're recording. And you can totally tell the moment you say rolling, they instantly switch. They instantly switch, and it's just like it's just weird because you become self-aware because someone's watching you, and it's just like you act differently. It's weird. So, but yeah, but if you were to put like the actors in that space and have like you have something to like work off of, it's just like different energy. Like even working like when did theater, it's such a difference when you go from like a rehearsal to like a dress rehearsal. When you put them in the costume, when you put them there, when they're on it, like it's a completely different feeling. And if you have like a green, it's just, yeah, it's just you don't have anything to react off of. It's just, I don't know. That was like a big thing of mine. But it's to do that. It's a lot. It costs a lot of money to do something like that.
Well, you mentioned your theater background. I'm curious, did you ever like consider in theater how you have a minimalist representation of a setting through just lights and a single prop? Or like, did you play with is there any inspirations you took from theater to apply to what you did?
Oh, I see. To a certain extent, I would say yes. Like I want like I try to do like lighting cues. Like I really like lighting cues and things like that. So like and a lot of physical elements inside the game opposed to just like filming us playing. And I even do that with like my home games. Like for instance, I'll have my players, I'll hide something around my apartment, and the players don't know that until I give them like a very obvious clue that it's actually outside the game. So like there's parts where it's inside the game and outside of the game. So like I love to do like a physical element to the show, lighting different lighting cues. I'm fortunate enough to have like certain like light bulbs, and I can activate them on my phone, and I can do different lighting cues and stuff like that. So like that's also an element that I like to add.
Nice. Does your experience and training as a cinematographer, does that impact heavily how you build the show?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, so, as being a cinematographer, it it's sort of like a double-edged sword though. Because of where I'm at in my career, I want to bring a very high production value show. So I'm using a lot of equipment, a lot of lights, and I mean, I personally really like the way that the show looks. I think it's very well polished. It's not perfect. There's a couple things that, after the fact that you watch, the first episode, you're like, oh shoot, I wish I would have done this differently. There was a really big, I don't know if you've had a chance to watch the show, but originally,
First one when it came out. It
okay,
was
perfect.
fair.
So so I had a really big lighting hue change that I really wanted to happen. And it just didn't work. So like my ideas were a little bit grander than the actual design. So originally what I wanted the show to happen was we were going to do an introduction and the lighting wasn't going to be good. It was going to be bad. It was going to be really flat lighting. It was supposed to be really flat lighting. It was supposed to be very like almost washed out. And then I start, I go, "Oh, hi guys, this is us. This is our show." And then we introduce the players. I'm like, "Okay, let's begin." And then I say, "I want to tell you a story." And when I say I want to tell you a story, everything was just going to go and dim. The lights were going to come up. It was just going to completely transform you into like the game space was my original idea. And then we go, okay. And then I say, okay, I want to tell you a story. And then like some of the lights would turn on, some of the lights wouldn't turn on. And it was just like it was a bunch of delayed effects. And we were all just like, it just didn't work. I mean, I know the way to make it work. Uh but we would have to have something called DMX and a bunch of other and probably different lights that can support DMX and actually have like a board operator. And it was just a whole nother thing. And I was like, well, it just didn't work the way I wanted it to. But, in editing, it's sort of, I mean, no one's going to know except for me.
No.
No one knows. No one knows. So, like, you see, it's like I introduce the players and then it just cuts and then it just comes back up and then we're in the space, which works, but not as like the director. I mean, that's not exactly what I wanted.
That would have been one hell of a moment. But
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, but it just gets better. Like those are the things that it's a trial by error. It's a trial by error. And we used a lot of the film equipment is mine. Like I own probably 90% of all the lights. There's a few things that we had to rent out. The cameras. So we shot on six different cameras, five or six different cameras. I own, I personally own it's called a Canon C300 Mark III. And I also have a really good relationship with Canon. So I asked Canon if they can help us out with some cameras. So they sent me they sent me three other cameras, and then we used those. And then I had to send them back. So I sent them back to them. But normally you have to rent those, and it's just like it's a cost or borrow one from a friend. And to me it's very important that all the cameras match. So I had like our A, B, and C camera are all the same exact camera. And then I have like an overhead camera, and then there was like a roaming camera to just snipe off like little like fun shots, like if someone rolling a dice or whatever. And then after everything, I will go back. Actually, in my living room behind me, I will personally film all the miniature inserts. So I just do that. Yeah, so I do that by myself. Uh, I mean, it's also easy for me because like I can leave it set up for like a month if I want to, and just like shoot something for 2 hours, take a break, watch like some show, and then come back, film a little bit. So yeah.
very cool. Okay. On the not less technical side, the gaming side of it, how did you go about building picking where it was going to be, building the world, getting the players involved? Like, had you played with these guys before? How did you come up with characters together? What was that like?
Great. That's an excellent question. So yeah, so I'll sort of start with the story. I guess the story. I guess I'll start with like the story wise. It's obviously D&D, as everyone knows. It's a collaborative storytelling. So y- creating a show makes it really difficult because you have to like somewhat be on the rails and you have to somewhat have like open exploration, right? And you also have to be entertaining. Like that's the other like hard part because you're playing to an audience. So I thought of, I when I first like found the players, I told them like it's gonna be more like a module than it is like an open sandbox campaign. So we can have, some parts are on the rails, and then each of the characters will also have like like a flashback episode, so they have like control over all of that. And the story that I came up with was I wanted to have like little Easter eggs and nostalgia from like my my personal, because you take what you borrow from what you know, right? So eventually, like if we get to certain parts in the story, like you'll see like certain I'll take movie references or I'll take video game references, and I think I'll combine all those type of things. And so like that's like where I started with like the story, and I'll dive more into it in a second. And then I was like, well, I need players, right? Obviously, I can't just do this by myself. Uh, so I did sort of like an audition. I had like an audition. So I reached out and I was like, hey, I'm trying to do this thing. Who would be interested? And then obviously I asked friends and all of that. So we did like a little bit of an audition thing. We got people to show up, and then we did like I think we had like 15, or I think we had about 15 to 20 people show up. And then from there I narrowed it down to about 8 people. And I needed four. So, and it was, I'd say, near impossible to to like try to find like my favorite four, whatever you want to call it. They're all of them are super talented. So we just did like chemistry tests. So I sat down everyone at the table and we would play, and I picked the ones that I felt played best with each other, who worked off of each other, and what their role would bring to the table. Because you can't have four people who are like, I mean, you can't have four people who are all the rogue who want to steal everything. I mean, like you could, but it just you want to have it as I felt that I wanted it as dynamic as possible. So the four that I chose is I felt like that was going to bring the best to the table. And the other, we'll see what happens with like the actual progression of the show, but I wanted the other people who like also wanted, I also just want them still involved in the show, but just like a different campaign, or like, because that's the, I mean, I'm probably going off on tangents, but the whole the whole point is to just get as many people involved and build like this community and just make this type of content, whoever, you know as make it as entertaining as possible, and also just have fun. Like I think those are the two things.
Very cool. And tell a good story, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. Well, yes, exactly, exactly. And I think it just comes. I think the story just happens naturally. I really do. Like I have an idea of where I want things to go and certain things that I want to happen. And then if they do something different, it makes it better every single time. It's just like, oh, I did not think that was going to happen, and I love your idea way more than I liked what I thought was going to happen.
That's the best part of being a DM sometimes, man.
Yeah, yeah,
So, what were some of the challenges, I guess, you ran in that you weren't expecting that you ran into with this?
yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a ton. So like originally this was a couple of years ago. So originally, like I filmed something, and I needed to use that as like a proof of concept to raise money. So I got some friends together, and then we filmed like a proof of concept. And then after that, some of them wanted to continue, and then some of them wanted to go a different direction. So we decided to do a Kickstarter to raise money. So I raised a little bit of money on Kickstarter to try to film as many episodes as we can. So money was probably like the hardest thing, and still is. I mean, that's the reality. I mean, I could easily film I could easily film this in my living room, right? Like I could probably film in my living room, but I just that's not what I want personally. Like that's not what I want. Like I want something that's in like a studio. Like that's where I'm at. But it comes at a great cost. So yeah, so money is like a big thing, and then scheduling. Even still, like even trying to schedule like the players to like do like rehearsal games or things like that is still a super challenge, because everyone is in weird, is either in like the entertainment space, or they have jobs, or they have this and they have other things that are going on. So scheduling still is the biggest thing. So I figured, if the show is actually becomes successful or whatever, I can just be like, okay, well, I'll just pay you to be here. Just pay my friends to hang out with me.
Let's be honest, scheduling is the hardest part of any D&D campaign, so
Oh yeah, 100%.
right on. Um, the part we're not talking about, I guess, is the audience. I mean, that's the other part, the other flip side. What are kind of things you're doing to engage them in interesting or different ways?
Great, excellent. I so I have an idea, and I don't know if it's gonna work the way that I want it to work. So my original idea is to get the audience to give us, similar to an improv show, right? So similar to an improv show, I want the audience to give us suggestions. And it can be like an action, it can be an object, or even like a character, or like a character's name. So my thought process was, I take all of these things, and then before we film, each of the players will basically pull from a hat and pick one of those, and then they have to implement that into that episode somehow, somewhere. And you don't know, because like I don't want it to be like super obvious. I don't want it to be like super obvious. So like have like a subtle thing, have it be a very like subtle slash fun thing that they do, and then and if they do it, so like it's hard to figure out. This is the balance thing, because I want to know that they do it, because if they do it, the idea was they get inspiration. That was like sort of the idea, or they just do it, and then at the very end, during like the bonus show, like we would talk like, oh, did you guys actually do the thing that you're supposed to do? And they go, oh yeah, I did that. And then the next episode, that would give them inspiration. That was the idea that I had. But it's difficult when so many different things are happening during, and then you either forget to do it, or because it's not live. It's not a live show. So like that's like the hard part. We can't like literally have someone type in like, okay, we want you to do this, or re-roll that dice, because it's, we filmed all this. uh I'd have to do the math, but I think about 8 or 9 months ago is when we filmed these first 4 episodes.
Hmm. They there was a lot of comments on the YouTube show as it was playing. Do you go back and look at those and see what kind of engagement you're getting in there? Or
Oh
is it
yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's always difficult to look at YouTube comments. I mean, I'm assuming everyone knows it can be a cruel place. But we've had a lot of positive feedback. I tell people to, if we made a mistake, or if there's like a note, I mean, criticism, I'd give it to me, because that's the way that I'm going to make the show better. Someone might mention, the music's too loud, or I can't hear the this is happening. And sometimes it could be a user error, I don't know, but like, oh, don't, so I think I remember one of the notes off the top of my head was like, don't have the players whisper. So it's just like something like, okay guys, if we're going to whisper, do it, whisper loudly. Like,
stage whisper?
yeah, yeah. So it's just like those little things that you don't think about, because you it's almost with anything, any show. You have such a large number of people, you have so many more eyeballs watching this than in just one person, and they're going to catch something, they're going to hear something. And I've always every project that I've ever done is, okay, we did it, it's not going to be perfect. Nothing's going to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes. Something's going to be off, whatever that may be. How do you make it better? What's that thing? Okay, well, you learn from your mistakes, and it just gets better and better and better and better and better. And that's at least that's what I always try to. So like the next time if we get a chance to film, it's like, how do we make it better? I mean, I already have a list of things that I'm gonna, try to do, but yeah.
I went through the comments as well before getting ready for the show, and overwhelmingly positive. And a lot of people, a very common thing that kept coming up is how engaging the story was and how interesting the player characters are. So you guys are killing it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and I wanted to make sure that it was very character, like it is very character driven. That was, I mean, because that's what with any D&D shows, like you're gonna connect to the character. I want the audience to feel like they're with us. Like that's the whole idea. I think that the why do you watch this type of content? Because like watching a TTRPG show is not for everyone. And that's why I literally tell all my friends, like 99% of you aren't going to watch the show. I already know that, not a big deal. But those who do want to feel like they're at the table with us. Because, for they can't play for whatever reason. Someone either just moved and they're like, I don't have a core group right now. I'm busy with family. I'm doing other things. But if they can sort of have that feeling that they're there with us at the table, that's then I think then we did a good job at the end of the day.
Well, I guess what would be the key takeaways that you could pass on to a home DM from what you're doing and what you've done? What are the things that could be applied to anybody's home game to make their home game better?
I mean, uh, I mean, I think the biggest thing that, for DMs and everything, and it's sort of like a general rule of thumb, is just, listen to your players. A lot of players try to give you something, and they all, because everyone at the table wants to do something, and you can sort of understand or hear or figure it out like what they want to do, and you want to try to get to that point where it's like, okay, let them have that moment, whatever that moment is. Listen to their backstory, where if it's like, if they put, I don't know, my long lost brother, I lost my brother during the war, whatever. And if you don't do anything with the long lost brother, like you missed that gift. Like your players give you gifts, and they might not even like mean to. Like sometimes it just happens, and they're like, okay, well, I'm gonna give you this gift, and if you don't use it, I mean, that's just good storytelling. It's just like feeding off of the take what take what they give you, and then try to give it back to them.
And that's why we watch live play shows, is for those moments of spontaneous storytelling between a collaborative group that you don't see in other medium. You're not going to see that in a movie or TV show. It's because it's happening collaboratively and spontaneously, and
Yeah,
the dice
yeah,
decide.
yeah, yes. And I guess, and the other thing is, don't there's always a difference between like a level of like a show and then like a level of like a home game, right? So home game, you can like retcon something, you could like try to take something back and be like, oh, you know what? I totally forgot to add this thing last game. So just do that. Like no one's gonna be like, oh my God, yeah, that was a great idea. That's a great idea. We can say that, you actually met this person who you were supposed to meet him last time, but I just totally forgot. Because there's a few things in like the show that I didn't do, and or I wish like I was an after the fact that I'm like, oh my God, I totally missed that moment. I totally, totally missed that moment. And I think that's also been like a tough thing because I can go into it later, but there's like two or three things that I really wish I would have done for episode one. And then yeah, but there's so many things going on when you're on the show. It's also time. Like, oh my gosh, you like I want to have like an hour and a half to 2 hour long episodes, right? And there's only so much that you can do. And because like, how you play a D&D game, you can play for 6 hours.
Yeah, an hour and a half is not a very long game,
Yeah, yeah,
period.
yes. So there's only so much that you can do within the time. And then of course, if you have, a lot of battles and I know I'm going off on a little bit, but like episode one, there's a lot of battles in episode one. It's actually it's very much purposely a dungeon crawl, reminiscent to like a traditional like D&D like dungeon crawl game. And there is a reason for that.
I love how you open in media res, in the middle of action. Like there's an instantly a wall broken, quite literally, and suddenly action is happening. Was that a conscious choice, or was that just the way you play?
No, it definitely conscious choice. So the reason for that is because I would technically say episode one is episode three in like the reality of the show. Because like episode one should be we all gather at whatever point we're gathering. We have character introductions and we say, oh, I'm so and so because so and so reasons, and this is what my goals are. And you go through that, and it's like an hour and a half of just that. And then episode 2 is okay, now we need to go to the place because that's where our mission is heading. Let's go to the place. And then something happens on the way to the place. And then episode 3 is boom, we break down the wall and now we're here. What's happening? And I felt, and the way that I built this overall story, and we can go into it, is the main meat of the story doesn't happen until the end of episode 2. So that was the hard thing. So if I'm gonna make a show, so it would be what, episode 5? Episode 5 would be like, oh, that's the twist of the show, and by episode 5, if I might lose 99% of my audience by episode 5. So I was like, I have to try to get there at the end. Originally, I tried to get there at the end of episode 1, is what I was trying to do, but I put too much into it. Could have cut some things, like looking back on it, but I think I enjoyed like the pacing of it. Because the other small thing is episode 1 and 2 are technically session 1. It's a 4 hour. The way I look at it is it's a 4 hour D&D session, and I break it up into 2 episodes. Is
Why
like
did why did you do that? I'm curious. Like that is actually something I was wondering, because you Critical Role, for instance, their original shows were like 6 hours long, sometimes 8 hours once in a
yeah.
while. But why did you cut it to an hour and a half?
Well, I mean, it's just so. I mean, I feel like honestly, movies, like you watch an hour and a half long movie, 2 hour long movie, like that's the way, that's the world that I'm used to, and I feel like people's attention spans are used to that if you're going to watch like a TV show or a movie. Critical Role, on the other hand, because like this is also Critical Role, and everyone either watching this probably already knows, is lightning in a bottle. It will
Yeah.
probably never happen again. There are so many things that fell into place with Critical Role. It was right timing, right place. It was when Twitch was started. Twitch didn't know what they were, and it was like all these different things that happened. And obviously, they're like that cast is extremely talented. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
Awesome.
yes, there's so many things that like it like I said, lightning in a bottle. Very, very hard to like replicate that. And also for like show wise and all that stuff, I didn't want to mimic. I mean, I didn't want to mimic, for the most part, not try to become someone else. Like I said, I know my show is very similar to Dimension 20. Like that's the type of show that I would love to like work on all the time. Small note, and I don't know if you know this, I actually worked on a couple episodes of Dimension 20 as a camera operator. Yeah, so I was a camera operator on season 1 of Dungeons and Drag Queens.
Oh, cool.
So I actually met the DP, Kevin Stiller, and he invited me to be a camera operator on that. Yeah, super fun, man. Super fun. But it's also one of those things where, their crew, it's such a tight crew, and they usually use the same people. Like at the end of the day, like if I mean I love the show that I'm creating 100%, but like if I was, let's just say, like the DP for, I don't want to take Kevin's job because he's the coolest person, but like if I were to have his job, like I'd be completely happy. I'd be like, all right, this is good. I'm happy with this. Like I would be very content. Like that would be an amazing opportunity. But that's just not the reality. And that's why I was like, well, I have to make my own type of thing. So
Yep.
yeah,
You were creating something that is definitely your own, and it's cool enough that it's going to get an audience. So
yeah, yeah,
good for you, man. Good
yeah.
for you.
Oh, and the other, I guess I'm just gonna spoil, because I was gonna get back onto like at the end of episode 2, so I'm gonna do little spoilers because I think I want to spoil it because like that's like the twist of the story, and I don't know if you know the twist of the story. Did we ever talk about it? Did you, did you watch the end of the trailer?
No, I don't think I did, because
Okay,
you're not ringing any bells right now.
okay, so I sort of like sneak peek something at the end of like the trailer. So basically, at the end of episode 2, the players sort of get sucked into a portal and they end up in a completely different world, and eventually you sort of find out that they end up in Wisconsin. They end up in Wisconsin in 1970.
Okay, that's a twist. Yeah, that's a twist. I can't wait
So
to see it now.
yeah, there's a little bit of history. There's a couple like Easter eggs. There's a couple little things of if you know, if you know, you know type of things. But at the core of it, it's like, players trying to get back home and also save like people from this like magical town type of thing.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
But yeah.
I'm pumped, man. I can't wait to see episode 2 now. Might have to go do the Patreon thing.
There you go. I mean, yeah, the other, I'll sort of get into it too. Like the other unfortunate, the reality of this show is it costs a lot of money. And I'm honest with any single person. Like it costs about probably 10 to $15,000 a day to shoot this. So yeah, and the most of the cost is crew members, feeding them, location, all of that. So we only have 4 episodes, and I know it is a very, very low chance of success. I already know that. I as well as it's doing right now, it's not doing as good as I would tech like the producer like hat that I put on is it's not doing as well. So we need people to tell other people about the show. Obviously, people need to support us, and if they can, I hate, man, trust me, I don't want to ask people for money. That's the last thing I want to do. I don't want to. I literally hate asking for anything in general. But the reality is, like, the show will end. Like at the end of episode 4, if we're not able to get funding, like the show's gonna die. Like that is the hard truth. Can't do anything about it because I can't. I've already put, like, me personally, probably put about 20 grand of my own money into this. Then money from the Kickstarter, and then at a certain point, I can't just keep dumping money into something, or I have to focus on like my career, like my cinematography career. So at a certain point, hopefully we'll see what happens. I would love to look back on this, in the next, probably the next 3 to 4 months will really determine if the show will continue.
Well, let's get the word out there, man. I want to see it keep going.
Me too. I would love to, man. I have a lot of really fun things planned, and also not just like, not even just me, like the other people that I want to get involved, because there are multiple people in this space. So a couple of our players have their own TTRPG shows. Uh, David Tilstra, he has Story Quest. He has his own TTRPG show called Story Quest. Their episodes are out right now. And David's an amazing person. Tori, she has her own Tabletop Runners. They have their own TTRPG show. They've been doing a lot of stuff in that space. And then Ash, who is a musician, she yeah, doing music stuff. And then Cortez is a nurse. So he's not even like a performer, not an actor, not in like the entertainment space, but he's like a nurse. Yeah, so like bringing all of those people together and bringing their circles into our space, and then expanding from there, having different campaigns, guest players. Uh, I me personally, so there are two stories that I want to have on camera. There's the one that I'm doing now, which I don't know what's gonna happen if we do, like, let's say money's not an issue, right? I have season 1 planned. Like I sort of know where I want it to end, and then season 2, if we were to do a season 2, I have an idea of like what would start it, and no clue where it would end. So we can see where that is. And then there's a completely different story that I have, which technically I like more than the story that I have right now. So those are the only two stories that I want to be the DM for. Then after that, I don't really want to be on camera anymore. I want to have other DMs, I want to have other players, because if the show is just me and us and those four at the table, that's a failure. Like I don't want it to be just my show. Like that's not what I want. That is not what this is even close. Uh, because it's like I was saying before, it's a community. This the whole, and sorry, going off on a tangent, but the whole point of D&D is community. There is a reason why you and I are talking. We are nerds. We connect on that level. I can talk to someone else who says, "Oh, I play D&D." Instantly connect. It's like anything. It's like sports, that people connect over sports. Well, we connect over nerd stuff. And that I love that community. When I did when I ran the D&D club at my college, the thing that stood out to me the most is someone came up to me and and I don't want this to sound like mean or rude or anything, but like sometimes nerds have are very specific kind of awkward type. Not everyone, but some of us are awkward. We're socially awkward. We might not fit in certain places. And this person came up to me and was like, "I feel like I don't belong anywhere." And your group, the D&D club, has given me like almost like purpose, and I feel like I belong here. And that was more powerful than anything. I have people who made friendships that are still friends to this day. I had people that had relationships because of meeting within like the D&D group. Like I said, it's the community. You can go into a game store and have a pack of, have a deck of Magic the Gathering and sit down and play with someone else. And you might not have anything in common, but it's that nerdness, and it just we gravitate towards each other. And I truly think, the community is amazing. Because I think, in a weird way, I mean, obviously it's gotten a lot better now than what it used to be, before, if you were a nerd, you were, lowest on the totem pole, but now like we've climbed the ranks. We've climbed the ranks. Yeah. And I think that also has like we all can relate to that. We can all have that understanding that this is a space that we belong. No matter who you are, it doesn't matter who you are, what you believe in, whatever. I whatever you're going through, nerds just like I feel like we connect.
It's kind of strange that you went on that tangent because there's a question that I ask everybody that comes on the show, and you kind of answered it, but I'm going to ask it to you anyways because we're starting to get close to the end here. So I'm going to throw this question at you anyways. It's a philosophical question, lives at the heart of this social experiment I call a podcast. And that question is, in my opinion, there is a magical space at the intersection of story and game, improv, film, music, all these things, where people who come from different walks of life just naturally get along. There's a shared language. If you agree with me, what would be the magical thread that holds that space together?
Yes, it would be definitely community. Yeah, man, it's just community. It's just we're a bunch of nerds and we want to be nerds and we want to hang out with each other. Like that's it. Like I want to make a D&D show because I want to hang out with my friends and be a nerd. I want to be able to talk about the latest anime that I'm watching. I want to talk about the latest 3D print that I'm watching or 3D print that I'm printing and painting. That's it, and we can have those conversations and feel comfortable. We feel comfortable with talking about that to each other, and there's an acceptance with all of that within the community.
Speaking of the latest 3D print, did you see Loot Studios Draconians? It's
Yeah, with the team. Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
nice.
yeah,
I
yeah.
got
They're
my
cool.
buddy printing it for me.
Oh, nice, nice. I actually had I need to talk with them again, but I talked to them with potentially being a sponsor of the show. So I need to have another conversation with them. The you probably know the hardest thing with sponsors is they just want to know the numbers that you're pulling, which I get. You know what? They're a business. They need to know if it's the reality of and there's if you're getting 20 views per video, a company's unfortunately they're not going to be interested. But if you're pulling 20,000, they might be interested. So that's just the reality. That's business, and I totally get that. So there's a couple companies I need to circle back and be like, hey, these are our numbers. If you're interested, let me know. If not, I get it.
What a nice attitude. Just
Yeah, I would love. I mean, yeah, I mean, I would love for people to help me out. I mean, that'd be great. But like I said, I'm a business owner. Like I own my own essentially own my own production company. I have my own LLC. Like I have to sell myself. Like what do I bring to the table? Like that's like the biggest thing is, why is someone going to hire me over someone else? It's like, well, maybe I have more, I have film equipment, I have the right resources, I have the right connections. Like that's just like, what do you bring to the table that someone else might not? So I mean, that's just, like I said, that's business and I get it. So, yeah.
There it is. All right, buddy. Well, we're going to start heading for the door. I do like to do a little quick fire just to get to know you a little better. What are you reading these days?
So there's two answers. One is the I Am Number 4 books. I'm rereading those. The second one is my friend, was it Brian Sanderson? Is that right? Do you know who I'm talking about?
Brandon Sanderson?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the one. I don't know. He literally just told me about this author like a couple weeks ago. So I ordered a couple books on Amazon, and it sounded it's
Kind of thing?
yes.
Sanderson. Okay.
Okay, that one. So yeah, so I bought some of those books, and I haven't read them, but I'm gonna start.
There you go. What are you playing these days?
I
D&D.
Yeah, I just a Legacy of Kain and the also Soul Reaver remastered 1 and 2.
Nice. Very cool. Oh, yeah. Here's a tough one for you, though. If the essence of you, Joseph, was perfectly distilled down and then injected into a game world, A, what would the world be? And B, what would your stereotype, like your race, class, or your job, or whatever, what would that be?
Okay, I mean, I'm just gonna go with what I've always played. I've always played like a Dragonborn in like every video game. So it'd be something like Skyrim, and I'm like I don't think they have Dragonborn, but they have like lizard people. But we'll just say Skyrim world, Dragonborn.
All right. Very cool. All right, man. Well, at this point, I usually like to open up a little bit of space. So I'll let you signal boost and promote what you got going on. Obviously, you got the show. Why don't you hit me with your elevator speech?
So yeah, so my name is Joseph Timothy Adams, and I am the DM, producer, and director for The Dice Decide, which is a D&D TTRPG actual play. And episodes are on YouTube, so you can find us there. And we have an amazing cast, and a unique story. And hopefully the community enjoys it, wants to watch it, shares it with their friends, and we can just sort of be nerds together and have fun.
I will throw all the links in the show notes and descriptions and podcast episode description and all that so people can click and find you and come along and watch this incredible story as it unfolds. But that's it, man. I'm going to push you out into the cold. But on the way out the door, do you have any parting words of wisdom for us?
No, the thing that I've been telling people is, no matter who you are always welcome at our table.
The clockwork boiler has sprung a leak, and there's currently more steam in here than air, so we're going to have to close up for the night while the gearsmiths patch things up. But before we rush out into the cold, I want to once again say thank you to Joe for stopping by and sharing your insight and wisdom. And to you, dear listener, as always, thank you for taking your seat at the table. Until we meet again, keep creating, exploring, and sharing those worlds and stories. Stay safe, Wanderer. Your chair will be ready by the fire the next time you stop in at the corner of Story and Game.